Hello everyone, my name is Dr. Elena Douvlou and I'm the program leader of the Master's Program in Architecture and Urbanism here at the Metropolitan College, the largest private education institution in Greece. Students attending this course are effectively 4th and 5th year architecture students who have completed their bachelor degree and are pursuing a career in architecture or urban planning. The course has at its core urban design with case studies that have a special semiology in the wider context of Athens. Therefore, I would like to welcome you to sunny Elefsina. And as you can see, we're in a beautiful spot near the sea where the backdrop of the sea we can see the historic island of Salamina. Effectively, the whole area here is charged with history, as the city bears a very special relationship to the notion of history and transition, as throughout the centuries the history of Elefsina has been a history of consecutive transitions, whereas today it's again confronted with the need for transition to a different model of development, because as you can see it has a heavy industrial feeling to it. You can actually look around and see that mainly we can have the idea of a city that is dominated by industry. The city was actually founded by the myth of and the story of Persephone, which symbolizes the change of seasons and the perpetual transition from the land of the dead to the land of the living and vice versa. There is a very large archaeological place in the northeast of where we're standing now, slightly uphill, whereas the historical industrial zone extends to the coastal front of the city, which you can actually see by rotating left and right from where you're standing at the length of about 2.5 kilometers. Elefsina was the third and newest historical industrial center of Attica. The start of the industrial activity generally in the city dates back to the third quarter of the 19th century, with relatively small units of processing agricultural products, whereas the jump was carried out with the installation of the cement industry Titan in 1902, and followed by steelmakers, yards, petrochemicals, and industries since the 1960s. The majority of these factories was built on the coastline of where we are now. The chimneys of Titan and the quarries, which you can actually see on your left, the blast furnaces, tanks and aerial networks of petrochemicals have changed the scale of urban and rural landscapes dramatically. It is not a surprise, therefore, that with all these industrial activities, from mining to gaseous and liquid wastes of the industries, Elefsina was considered one of the most polluted areas in Europe at the end of the previous century. Only then it was when pollution was partly controlled. The phenomenon of deindustrialization in the last quarter of the 20th century in Elefsina had as a consequence the closure of very few of the major historical industrial units, such as the one that we see on slightly on the right in front of us, which is also the site of our case study, which is called Kronos, which is translated in English as Saturn. This is one of the industrial units that was actually closed. Mainly those inside the urban city were actually closed, while most of the rest, mainly post-war, industrial potential remains quite active outside the city. In the 1960s and 70s, the city's natural environment suffered some major degradation due to the pollution caused by industrial facilities operating in the area. And for Greeks, the image of Elefsina is inextricably linked to industry and the destruction of the natural environment. This is why it has been eloquently observed that anyone passing through here looks the other way. Despite the fact that the city's reality has changed radically since then, The stereotype of a city ruined by industry remains prominent in the public perception, and it kind of discourages people from visiting Elefsina and becoming acquainted with the significant cultural reserve currently at its disposal. For example, there's a wonderful archaeological site which we may provide some photographs of. And it's very important to stress that although geographically small, Elefsina is suitable for a study of the great political, economic and environmental issues that concern the global community. How is it possible for such a small city, one questions, to embody such timeless concerns? Elefsina, I believe, is a very powerful metaphor for the social and geopolitical dynamics of post-industrial Europe, which is returning to its archaeological and historical past in order to remain standing. And this is why it has been the site that we have selected for our case study.